They spent $200 million on the security system. They hired the best engineers from MIT and Stanford. They rented the Grand Ballroom at the Pierre in New York City for the launch that was supposed to change the world. But when the screens turned red and the company's stock began to freefall, not a single executive in a $5,000 suit knew what to do. The solution didn't come from the CEO. It didn't come from the lead architect. It came from the girl holding the tray of shrimp puffs. In 3 seconds, she saved the company. In 5 seconds, she was fired. And what happened 10 minutes later? Well, let's just say the CEO, Harrison Blackwood, found something in her file that made his blood run cold. This is the story of Paige Sullivan, and the night the invisible became invincible. The air inside the Grand Ballroom of the Pierre Hotel smelled of expensive perfume, old money, and the faint metallic scent of overheating servers. Paige Sullivan adjusted the collar of her black vest, which was itching her neck. She was 24 years old, but tonight she felt 100. Her feet throbbed in the mandatory non-slip shoes that were half a size too small. To the 300 guests sipping vintage Dom Perignon, she was furniture. She was less than furniture. She was a calorie delivery system, a ghost gliding between the tuxedos and the silk gowns, offering hors d'oeuvres and vanishing before anyone had to make eye contact. "Champagne?" she whispered to a heavy-set man in a velvet jacket. He didn't look at her. He just took the glass, his eyes glued to the massive 80-foot LED wall dominating the stage. "Thank you. Harrison is really betting the farm on this one, isn't he?" The man muttered to his companion. Paige moved on. She knew exactly who Harrison was. Harrison Blackwood, CEO of Blackwood Kincaid, the largest logistics and cybersecurity firm on the East Coast. He was the man standing on the stage right now, looking like a modern-day Caesar. Tall, with silver-streaked hair that looked like it had been spun from steel wool and a jawline that could cut glass. "Ladies and gentlemen," Harrison's voice boomed through the surround sound, smooth and confident. "Tonight, we don't just launch a program, we launch a nervous system for the global economy. I present to you the Kestrel Protocol." Applause rippled through the room, polite, wealthy applause. Paige paused near a pillar, balancing her tray. She looked at the screen. To the guests, it was just a fancy visualization of data streams, globes spinning, lines connecting Tokyo to London to New York. But to Paige, it was something else. She squinted. That refresh rate is off, she thought. The packet loss on the tertiary node is spiking. She shook her head. "Stop it, Paige. You're not that person anymore. You're a waitress. You carry shrimp. You don't debug code." She turned to head back to the kitchen, but the sound of a microphone feedback screech stopped her cold. It wasn't just a screech, it was a digital scream. On the massive screen, the beautiful blue globe flickered. Then it stuttered. Then, instantly, the entire 80-foot display turned a violent blood red. "Critical failure. System lockdown imminent. Unauthorized latency detected. Asset liquidation in progress." The room went silent, dead silent. The kind of silence where you can hear a pin drop, or in this case, a stock price crash. "What is that?" someone whispered. Harrison Blackwood stood on stage, his confident smile frozen. He tapped his earpiece. "Control? Cut the feed. Control?" The red screen didn't cut. Instead, numbers started scrolling rapidly. $12,000, $45,000, $82,000. "It's the live trading integration," a voice screamed from the front row. It was Natalie Reed, the chief technology officer. She scrambled up the stairs, her heels clicking frantically on the stage. "Harrison, the Kestrel is dumping the portfolio. It thinks the market is crashing. It's selling everything at zero." "Shut it down," Harrison roared, losing his composure. "Pull the plug." "We can't." Natalie was typing furiously on the podium terminal. "It's locked us out. It's a logic loop. It's treating the shutdown command as a hostility." Paige stood by the pillar. Her heart began to race. Not out of fear, but out of a strange rhythmic familiarity. She watched the scrolling code on the side of the main display. Most people were looking at the money lost. Paige was looking at the syntax. "It's not a hack," she realized. Her eyes darted left and right. "It's an integer overflow caused by the leap-second synchronization. They synced the demo to Greenwich Mean Time, but the server is running on Eastern Standard with a hard-coded offset. $104,000. The room erupted into chaos. Billionaires were pulling out phones, screaming at their brokers. Harrison Blackwood looked like he was about to have a stroke. "Get the server team in here," Harrison yelled. "They're in the basement, they're rebooting manually," Natalie screamed back, sweat dripping down her forehead. "It's going to take 10 minutes to cycle. By then we'll be bankrupt." Paige looked at the tray of champagne in her hand. Then she looked at the auxiliary control console. It was sitting unattended on a small table near the sound booth, just 10 feet away from her. The sound engineer had fled the moment the screaming started. "Don't do it," her brain warned her. "You promised yourself. You are invisible." $115,000. She looked at Harrison's face. The man looked broken. She looked at the terrified staff. If this company went under tonight, thousands of people, janitors, receptionists, drivers, would lose their jobs in the morning. Paige set the champagne tray down on a velvet chair. She didn't run. She walked, fast, purposeful. The auxiliary console was a chaotic mess of cables and a single laptop running a mirror of the main terminal. It was unguarded. Everyone was looking at the stage. Paige slid into the chair. The leather was still warm from the sound engineer. Her fingers hovered over the mechanical keyboard. It had been 3 years since she touched a terminal like this. The muscle memory hit her like a physical blow. She didn't hesitate. She hit Ctrl+Alt+T to open the command line. The screen was locked. Admin password required. "Hey," a security guard, a massive man named Tiny, spotted her. "Get away from there. What do you think you're doing?" Paige didn't look up. "I'm saving your pension, Tiny. Back off." "I said move." He reached for her shoulder. "Wait." The voice came from the stage. It was Harrison Blackwood. He had spotted the commotion. "Who is that?" "Security, remove her." Paige ignored them all. She knew the back door, not a hack but a factory default that lazy developers always forgot to patch out of the Linux kernel used in these specific server stacks. She typed root chi admin chaka force password admin. It didn't work. They had patched it. $130,000. "Grab her," Harrison yelled. Tiny's hand clamped onto her shoulder, his grip like a vice. "Let's go, Missy." "1 second, Paige screamed, her voice cracking. "It's a leap-second error. The timestamps aren't matching. Let me fix the offset." Tiny paused. The specific jargon confused him. On stage, Natalie Reid froze. She looked up, squinting through the blinding stage lights. What did she say? Paige took the half-second of hesitation and wrenched her shoulder free. She didn't try to hack the password again. Instead, she went for the logic bypass. If she couldn't stop the selling, she could pause the internal clock. She typed furiously. Her fingers were a blur. Pseudo date S201026011916 Whoa. So. She manually forced the system time back 1 hour. If the system thought the market was closed, it couldn't sell. She hit enter. The result was instantaneous. The scrolling red numbers stopped. The screaming sirens cut out. The giant screen froze. System paused. Market status closed. Trading suspended. The silence that followed was heavier than the chaos. The total loss stopped at $142,000. It wasn't zero, but the bleeding had stopped. The company was wounded, but alive. Paige took a breath. Her hands were shaking. She stared at the cursor blinking on the black screen. She slowly pulled her hands away from the keyboard as if it were red hot. She stood up. The security guard, Tiny, was staring at her with his mouth open. She smoothed her apron. She picked up her tray of champagne from the velvet chair. "Does anyone want a refill?" she asked, her voice trembling slightly. Nobody laughed. Harrison Blackwood jumped off the stage. He didn't take the stairs. He vaulted over the edge and marched toward her, his face a mask of fury and confusion. Natalie Reid was right behind him. The crowd parted like the Red Sea. They were staring at Paige as if she had just grown wings. Harrison stopped 2 feet in front of her. He towered over her. He smelled of sweat and expensive scotch. He looked at the laptop, then at her. "Who are you?" he demanded. His voice was low, dangerous. "Paige," she said, looking at his tie because she couldn't look him in the eyes. "I'm a server. Waitress. Sorry, I'll go clock out." "You just overrode a military-grade encryption kernel," Natalie Reid said, breathless, stepping up beside Harrison. She looked at the code on the screen. You didn't stop the script. You tricked the computer into thinking it was yesterday. That is brilliant and impossible. It's not impossible, Paige mumbled. It's just a time zone conflict. The Kestrel is sensitive to latency. I read about it in the brochure. Harrison's eyes narrowed. He grabbed her wrist, not aggressively but firmly. He lifted her hand, looking at her calloused fingers. Brochures don't teach you syntax like that, Harrison said. Security. Tiny stepped forward. Yes, Mr. Blackwood? Take her to my office, Harrison said. Do not let her leave. Do not let her talk to anyone. Confiscate her phone. Am I arrested? Paige asked, panic rising in her chest. That depends, Harrison said, his eyes cold steel, on who sent you here to sabotage my company, or if you're the one who just saved it. Harrison Blackwood's office at the top of the Obsidian Tower, the corporate HQ connected to the hotel, was larger than Paige's entire apartment building. The walls were glass, offering a panoramic view of a Manhattan that looked peaceful from this height. Paige sat on a minimalist leather chair that cost more than her car. She sat on her hands to stop them from shaking. The door opened. Harrison walked in, followed by Natalie Reed and a man in a sharp grey suit. Dominic Cross, the company's head of legal. Harrison didn't sit. He paced. We checked the logs, Natalie said, throwing a tablet onto the table in front of Paige. You saved us. The system was in a recursion loop. If it had run for 30 more seconds, the liquidation would have been irreversible. Blackwood Kincaid would have ceased to exist by morning. You're welcome, Paige said softly. We also ran a background check, Dominic Cross said. He had a voice like sandpaper. Paige Sullivan, born in Chicago, high school diploma, no college degree, employment history. Diner waitress, dog walker, retail associate, and for the last 6 months, banquet server for the Pierre. Dominic leaned in. So, Miss Sullivan, explain to me how a dog walker knows how to execute a root-level override on a proprietary Unix system. Paige swallowed hard. This was the moment she had been running from for 5 years. I read a lot, she said. Harrison slammed his hand on the desk. The sound echoed like a gunshot. Don't lie to me, he shouted. I have shareholders calling for my head. I have the SEC launching an investigation tomorrow morning. I need to know who you are. Are you a plant? Do you work for Vane Tech? Did they send you to crash the system so you could look like the hero? No. Paige stood up. I don't work for anyone. I just saw the code. Nobody just sees the code, Harrison yelled. I do, Paige yelled back, her fear turning into anger. I see the patterns. The refresh rate on the screen was lagging by 14 milliseconds. The integer stream was repeating every 496 cycles. It's a standard memory leak if you don't buffer the timestamp. It's basic. It's sloppy. You spent $200 million and you forgot to account for the leap second. The room went quiet again. Natalie Reed was staring at Paige with wide eyes. She's right, Harrison. The diagnostics just came back. It was the leap second. The buffer overflowed. Harrison stared at Paige. He walked around the desk and sat down, studying her face. He was looking for something. Recognition? What's your father's name? Harrison asked quietly. Paige froze. What? Your father, Harrison repeated. A talent like that isn't learned in a library. It's usually genetic. Or trained from childhood. Who is your father? Paige looked at the door. It was closed. Tiny was outside. There was no way out. My father is dead, she said. His name, Harrison pressed. Tobias, she whispered. Tobias Miller. The color drained from Harrison Blackwood's face. He fell back into his chair as if he had been punched in the gut. Even Dominic, the stony lawyer, looked up sharply. Tobias Miller, Harrison breathed. The architect. Natalie looked confused. Who? The guy who wrote the original Cobalt source code in the 90s. The guy, Harrison said, his voice shaking, who I destroyed. Harrison looked at Paige with a new expression. It wasn't anger anymore. It was fear. And guilt. You're Tobias Miller's daughter. He was my partner. 20 years ago, we built the foundation of this company together. And then he went to prison for corporate espionage. He died in there. He was innocent, Paige said, her voice trembling with 5 years of suppressed rage. You framed him, you stole his code, you rebranded it as your own, and you let him rot in a cell because he wanted to make the software open source and you wanted to monetize it. I didn't frame him, Harrison said, though his eyes shifted away. He broke the law, Paige. He was a genius, Paige spat, and he taught me everything he knew before you took him away. That's why I know your system, Harrison. Because the Kestrel isn't new. It's built on my father's old kernel. You're running on a ghost's engine. Harrison rubbed his temples. The complexity of the situation was spiraling. He had the daughter of his dead, disgraced partner standing in his office, having just saved his company from a disaster caused by his own team's incompetence. What do you want? Harrison asked. Money? A settlement? We can cut you a check for $1 million right now, a consultancy fee. You take it, you sign an NDA, and you disappear. Paige looked at the tablet on the table. She looked at the city lights. $1 million. It would fix everything. Her rent, her debts, her life. She could go to Paris. She could vanish. But then she thought about the code. She thought about the sloppy error. No, Paige said. Harrison blinked. No? I don't want your money, Paige said. I want a job. Natalie Reed let out a short laugh. You want a job? Here? The Kestrel is broken, Paige said confidently. The leap second was just the symptom. The architecture is rotten. If you don't fix the core, it will crash again in 48 hours. And next time, manual override won't work. Harrison stared at her. And you think you can fix it? I know I can, Paige said, because I have my father's original notes, the ones you never found. Harrison leaned forward. This was a gamble, a massive, insane gamble. If I hire you, Harrison said, the board will riot. You have no degree, you're a waitress, and you're the daughter of a convict. And if you don't hire me, Paige countered, leaning her hands on his mahogany desk, you'll be bankrupt by Friday. Harrison Blackwood stared at her for a long, agonizing minute. The tension in the room was electric. Finally, he reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a key card. He slid it across the desk. You're not a waitress anymore, Harrison said. You're the acting head of special projects. You report only to me. Harrison, Dominic protested, you can't be serious. She starts now, Harrison said, standing up. Natalie, get her a laptop. Dominic, draft a contract. Paige, get to work. You have 48 hours to prove you aren't your father's revenge. Paige took the key card. It felt heavy in her hand. She had just walked into the lion's den. But Harrison didn't know that she hadn't come to just fix the code. She had come to burn the house down. The elevator ride down to the 4th floor, the engineering pit, was silent. Natalie Reed stood in the corner, typing furiously on her phone, likely doing damage control with the press. Harrison had returned to the top floor to deal with the board of directors, leaving Paige to survive the wolves on her own. When the elevator doors pinged open, the noise hit her first. The hum of cooling fans, the clatter of mechanical keyboards, and the low murmur of stressed voices. Listen to me, Natalie said, stepping out and blocking Paige's path for a moment. Harrison might be feeling sentimental because of your last name, but I'm not. You have access starting now. If you crash my servers, I won't just fire you. I will sue you for every penny you will ever make for the rest of your life. Clear? Crystal, Paige said, adjusting the oversized blazer she had borrowed from the lost and found to cover her waitress uniform. Natalie led her into the main server room. It was a cavernous space lit by blue LED strips. In the center sat the round table, a circular desk where the 6 lead engineers sat. They stopped talking as Paige approached. One man, sitting with his feet up on the desk, spun his chair around. He was wearing a shirt that cost more than Paige's car. This was Grant Lowry, the lead architect, the man who had built the system that just failed. So, Grant sneered, looking her up and down, this is the savior? The girl who serves pigs in a blanket? The other engineers snickered. She fixed the latency offset, Grant, Natalie said sharply, which is more than you did. It was a fluke, Grant said, standing up. He was tall, thin, and had eyes that looked like they hadn't blinked in days. She mashed a date command. A monkey could do it. And now I hear she's acting head of special projects. You've got to be kidding me, Nat. I have a PhD from Caltech. She has a notepad and an apron. Paige stepped forward. She didn't feel the fear she expected. She felt the cold, hard logic of the code. "Your PhD missed the memory leak in the tertiary stack," Page said quietly. Grant's smile faltered. "Excuse me." "I looked at the logs while I was upstairs," Page said, walking past him to an empty terminal. She sat down and logged in with her new credentials. The Kestrel system isn't just overflowing because of the leap second. It's overflowing because it's constantly pinging an external server. It's trying to send data out, but the firewall is blocking it, causing a backlog. That's why it crashed. Grant laughed. "That's a redundancy backup. It pings the cloud for storage." "No," Page typed a command, pulling up the network traffic visualizer on the main wall screen. "Redundancy backups use port 4043. This traffic is trying to exit through port 8080. That's an unencrypted web port. Someone isn't backing up the data, Grant. Someone is trying to steal it." The room went deathly silent. Even Natalie stopped checking her phone. "That's a glitch," Grant said, his voice suddenly tight. "A ghost protocol." "It's not a ghost," Page said, her fingers flying across the keys. "It's a script, a daemon, hidden in the kernel, and it's been running for 6 months." She hit enter. On the big screen, a line of code highlighted in bright yellow appeared. "Execute mirror dump. 192,168XX. "Who wrote this?" Natalie demanded, her voice dropping an octave. She walked over to the screen. "Grant, this is your signature on the compile." Grant turned pale. I reused some open-source libraries. It must be a dependency error. I didn't write that manually." Page spun her chair around. "You're right. You didn't write it. The syntax is too clean for you." Grant flushed red. "Watch it, Waitress." "It's old code," Page said, ignoring his insult. "It's Cobalt code. My father's style. Someone took my father's old extraction tools and weaponized them against this system." She looked at Natalie. "Harrison said my father's code was the foundation, but he didn't tell me that someone is actively using it to siphon data to a competitor." "Can you stop it?" Natalie asked, the reality of the corporate espionage sinking in. "I can," Page said, "but I have to take the Kestrel offline completely. No trading, no data in, no data out. For 12 hours. "Impossible," Grant shouted. "The Asian markets open in 4 hours. If we aren't live, our clients will pull their contracts. We'll lose billions." "If we stay live," Page shot back, "whoever is on the other end of that IP address will own this company by morning." "They aren't just stealing data, Grant. They are building a clone. They want to replace Blackwood Kincaid." Natalie rubbed her temples. She looked at Grant, then at Page. "The Waitress versus the PhD." She picked up her phone. "I'm calling Harrison." It was 3 a.m. The building was quiet, save for the hum of the cleaning crew vacuuming the lobby floors 40 stories below. Page sat alone in the server room. The engineers had been sent home. Harrison had given the order, "Shut it down, let her work." It was the biggest gamble of his career. Page was exhausted. Her eyes burned. She had 3 monitors running, one analyzing the kernel, one rewriting the security protocols, and one running a traceroute on the mysterious IP address that was stealing the data. She took a sip of cold coffee. Why does this code look so familiar? She wondered. The daemon script wasn't just similar to her father's work, it was his work. She recognized the variable names. He used to name his variables after constellations. Orion, Cygnus, Lyra. This wasn't just stolen code, this was code that had been written recently, but in his style. But that was impossible. Tobias Miller had died in prison 5 years ago. "You should eat." Page jumped. Harrison Blackwood was standing in the doorway. He wasn't wearing his tuxedo jacket anymore. His tie was undone, his sleeves rolled up. He held a paper bag from a late-night deli. "I'm not hungry," Page lied. Her stomach growled loudly. Harrison smiled, a tired, genuine smile that made him look 10 years younger. He walked over and placed the bag on the desk. "Pastrami on rye. It was your father's favorite." Page stiffened. "Don't talk about him." Harrison pulled up a chair and sat next to her. Not at the head of the table, but beside her. "We need to talk about him, Page. If you're going to save this company, you need to know the truth." "I know the truth," Page said, typing a command to isolate a memory block. "You were partners. You got greedy. You set him up." I didn't set him up, Harrison said softly. I covered for him. Paige stopped typing. She slowly turned her head. What? Harrison sighed, looking at the blinking lights of the server stacks. Tobias was a genius, but he was sick. Not physically, mentally. He became paranoid. He started believing the government was using our software to spy on citizens. He wasn't wrong entirely, but he snapped. He started hacking us. He stole client data, not to sell it, but to liberate it. He was going to leak everything: social security numbers, bank accounts, defense contracts. Harrison looked at Paige. If he had done that, he would have been tried for treason. He would have disappeared into a black site forever. So I cut a deal. I turned him in for corporate theft. A lesser charge. He went to regular prison. I thought he'd do 3 years and come out. I put the money for his lawyers in a blind trust. I paid for your mother's hospital bills anonymously. Paige felt the room spin. You paid for Mum's surgery. Who did you think paid it? Harrison asked gently. Tobias didn't have a dime. I tried to save him, Paige. But prison broke him. And when he died, I felt like I killed him myself. Tears pricked Paige's eyes. She wanted to scream at him, to call him a liar. But the pieces fit. The anonymous checks, the way her father had stopped writing to her in the final years. He was ashamed. Why didn't you tell me? She whispered. Would you have believed me? Harrison asked. Paige looked back at the screen, the code, the constellations. Harrison, she said, her voice shaking, look at this. She pointed to the line of code she had been studying. Authorization, key Orion 77. Orion 77, Harrison read. He frowned. That was Tobias's old admin key. We scrubbed that years ago. It's active, Paige said, and look at the timestamp on the modification. Harrison leaned in. Last modified yesterday. Someone is using his credentials, Harrison whispered, but that's impossible. Only Tobias knew that password. He never wrote it down. Paige felt a chill run down her spine. I knew it. He taught it to me, but I didn't write this script. Then who did? Harrison asked. There's only one other person who worked with him that closely, Paige said. She looked at Harrison. Who was the junior dev back in 2005, the one who fetched his coffee? Harrison's eyes went wide. The realization hit him like a truck. No, Harrison breathed. He's the head of legal now. He doesn't write code anymore. Dominic Cross, Paige said. He was there. He saw the source code before anyone else. And he's the one who pushed for the Kestrel launch to happen early, wasn't he? Harrison stood up, his face hardening into stone. He pushed for it, and he shorted the stock. What? Dominic, Harrison said, pacing. He's been suggesting we sell the company to Vane Tech for months. I refused. If the launch failed, the stock price would crash. Vane Tech could buy us for pennies on the dollar, and Dominic would get a massive payout from Vane. He's sabotaging the ship so he can sell the wreckage, Paige realized. Suddenly, the lights in the server room flickered. Then they went out completely. The emergency red lighting bathed the room in a sinister glow. The monitors in front of Paige flashed black. Then a skull and crossbones appeared on every single screen in the room. System purge initiated, deleting all assets in 10 minutes. He knows, Paige gasped. He knows we're tracking him. Harrison pulled out his phone. No signal. He's jammed the comms. The electronic lock on the server room door clicked loudly. Locked. We're trapped, Harrison said, rushing to the door and pounding on it. And he's wiping the entire company. Paige looked at the countdown on the screen. 09:45. 09:44. I can't stop it from the terminal, Paige said, panic rising. He has root access. He's locked me out. Then what do we do? Harrison yelled. Paige looked at the massive server towers, the physical machines humming in the dark. We can't use the software, she said, grabbing a fire axe from the emergency glass case on the wall. She shattered the glass. Harrison stared at her. Paige, what are you doing? We have to do a hard reset, she said, hefting the heavy axe. We have to physically sever the connection to the external drive before the delete command reaches the backup. That's the main fiber optic cable, Harrison shouted. If you cut that, we go dark for a week. The stock will tank. If I don't cut it, Paige screamed, there is no stock. There is no company. It's all gone in 9 minutes. She ran toward the thick bundle of cables at the back of the room. The door to the server room hissed. It wasn't opening. It was the fire suppression system. Halon gas deployment imminent. He's trying to suffocate us, Harrison realized. Dominic is trying to kill us. Help me, Paige yelled, swinging the axe at the metal grating protecting the cables. Clang. The metal dented but didn't break. Harrison didn't hesitate. He grabbed a heavy metal chair and slammed it against the grating. Again. Again. Together, he roared. Paige swung the axe. Harrison swung the chair. The grating gave way. The thick, glowing blue fiber optic cable lay exposed. The lifeline of a $100 billion company. Oro tu Akai. Do it, Harrison yelled. Paige raised the axe, but then she stopped. Wait, she said, staring at the cable. If I cut this, we lose the proof. The logs of Dominic's sabotage are on the outgoing stream. If I cut it, the evidence vanishes. He wins. If you don't cut it, the company is deleted, Harrison argued. We can deal with Dominic later. Survive now. No, Paige said. She dropped the axe. She ran back to the terminal. Paige, you have 90 seconds. I'm not cutting the line, she said, typing blindly in the red light. I'm reversing the flow. What? I'm not blocking the delete command, she said, her eyes manic. I'm mirroring it back to the sender. She typed, reflect, IP source, arch, overwrite. If he tries to wipe us, Paige gritted out, he wipes himself first. 00, 10. 0009. Harrison held his breath. The halon gas warning sirens were blaring. EWO 103. Paige hit enter. The screen froze. The countdown stopped at 101. For a second, nothing happened. Then the skull and crossbones vanished. A new message appeared. Target unreachable. Source drive formatted. Upload complete. Paige slumped back in her chair. Got him. Harrison looked at the screen. What did you do? I sent his delete command back to his own laptop, Paige breathed. And I downloaded his entire hard drive before his system crashed. We have everything. His emails to Vane Tech, his bank accounts, the sabotage script, everything. The door clicked, unlocked. The lights flickered back onto normal white. Harrison looked at Paige. She was sweating, covered in dust, holding a fire axe in one hand and a mouse in the other. She looked like a warrior. You're hired, Harrison said, a breathless laugh escaping him, permanently. The next morning, the sun streamed into the boardroom on the 50th floor. The 12 members of the board sat around the long oak table. They looked angry. Dominic Cross sat at the far end, looking smug. He didn't know yet. He thought the system had crashed. He thought Paige and Harrison were coming in to resign. The doors opened. Harrison walked in. He was freshly shaved, wearing a new suit. He looked invincible. Paige walked in next to him. She wasn't wearing a waitress uniform. She was wearing a tailored navy suit that Natalie Reed had rush-ordered for her. She carried a laptop. Harrison, the chairman of the board, said, "This is a disaster. The market is in turmoil. We hear there was a system purge last night." "There was an attempted purge," Harrison said, standing at the head of the table. Keyword, attempted. Dominic Cross spoke up, feigning concern. "Harrison, we warned you about this new software. And hiring unskilled labor to fix it. It was reckless. I have a motion prepared for your immediate removal as CEO." "Seconded," said a board member on Dominic's payroll. "Before you vote," Paige spoke up. Her voice was steady. She placed the laptop on the table and connected it to the projector. "You should see the Q4 security audit." Dominic scoffed. "We don't need to hear from the catering staff." "She is the chief technology officer," Harrison corrected. Natalie Reed, sitting in the corner, nodded in agreement. "I'm stepping down to VP of Operations. Paige is the new CTO. She earned it." Dominic's eyes narrowed. "What is this?" Paige hit a key. The screen lit up, not with charts, but with emails. From Dominic, crossblackwood.com, to ceorvanetech.net. Subject, "The worm is planted. Price drops tomorrow." The boardroom erupted in gasps. Dominic stood up, his chair clattering behind him. "That's fake. That's a fabrication." "It was pulled from your hard drive at 3:05 a.m. this morning," Paige said calmly, "just before your laptop accidentally wiped itself. We have the metadata. We have the bank transfers." You accepted $30 million to destroy this company. Two security guards, Tiny leading them, stepped into the room. Harrison looked at Dominic. "You're fired, Dom, and the FBI is waiting in the lobby." Dominic looked at Harrison, then at Paige. His smugness vanished, replaced by pure venom. "You think you've won?" Dominic snarled as the guards grabbed him. "You're just a waitress. You're nobody." "I'm Tobias Miller's daughter," Paige said, her voice ringing clear across the room. "And I just fixed your bugs." As Dominic was dragged out, the room fell silent. The chairman looked at the screen, then at Harrison. "Harrison, is the system stable?" Harrison looked at Paige. Paige checked her phone. The market had just opened. "The Kestrel is live," she said. "Latency is near zero. Efficiency is up 400%. The stock is up 12% in the first minute of trading." The board members looked at each other. Then, slowly, one by one, they started to clap. 6 months later, the corner office on the 50th floor of the Obsidian Tower was silent. It was a different kind of silence than the one Paige Sullivan was used to. It wasn't the terrified silence of a restaurant kitchen right before the dinner rush, nor was it the oppressive silence of an interrogation room. It was the silence of power. Paige sat behind a desk made of reclaimed oak, the same desk where Harrison Blackwood had once interrogated her about her father. She spun a Mont Blanc pen between her fingers. Her fingers, once calloused from carrying scalding plates and scrubbing counters, were now manicured, though a faint burn scar on her thumb remained. A permanent reminder of a grease splatter from the diner 3 years ago. She looked at the digital clock, 18 Nant. "Ms. Sullivan." The voice came from the intercom. It was her assistant, a young man fresh out of Yale named Leo. It still felt surreal that she, a college dropout, had an Ivy League assistant. "Yes, Leo. The car is downstairs. Mr. Blackwood is waiting, and the board sent up the final Q2 reports. They want your signature before you leave for the gala." "Leave them on the desk. I'll sign them when I get back," Paige said. She stood up and walked to the floor-to-ceiling glass window. New York City sprawled beneath her, a grid of electricity and ambition. 6 months ago, she was down there, invisible, looking up at these windows and wondering what it felt like to be important. Now she knew. It felt heavy. The transition hadn't been a fairy tale. The movies always cut to the happily ever after, right after the victory. They didn't show the weeks of grueling audits that followed the boardroom brawl. They didn't show the mass exodus of the old guard engineers who refused to take orders from a former waitress. They didn't show the nights Paige spent sleeping on the couch in her office, crying because she didn't know how to read a P&L statement and was too proud to ask Harrison for help. She had to learn corporate strategy the way she learned code, by breaking it down, finding the syntax and rewriting the bugs. She walked to the private bathroom in her suite. Hanging on the door was a garment bag. Inside was a dress, midnight blue, silk, tailored to fit her like a second skin. It cost $4,000. She had bought it with her first bonus check, but before she unzipped the bag, she opened the bottom drawer of her vanity. Lying there, folded neatly, was her old black apron, the one with the frayed strings, the one that smelled faintly of stale beer and bleach. She touched the fabric. "Don't forget," she told herself. "The moment you forget what this feels like, you become one of them." The Pierre Hotel, 1930, the grand ballroom was transformed. The lighting was soft, amber and gold. The air smelled of lilies and money. Harrison Blackwood stood near the entrance, adjusting his cufflinks. He looked tired but content. The grey in his beard had spread, but the frantic energy that used to vibrate off him was gone. He looked like a man who had survived a war and found peace in the rubble. When Paige walked in, the room didn't just quiet down, it shifted. Heads turned. Conversations paused mid-sentence. She wasn't wearing the standard black suit of an executive. The midnight blue gown caught the light with every step. Her hair, usually pulled back in a severe practical bun, cascaded over her shoulders. She didn't walk with the hurried, apologetic scurry of a server trying to stay out of the way. She walked with the measured, predatory grace of a CEO. Harrison stepped forward, offering his arm. "You look—" Harrison paused, searching for the word. "Formidable." "I was going for terrifying," Paige smiled, taking his arm. "How are the numbers?" "Donation pledges are already at 12 million. Harrison murmured as they walked through the crowd. The Miller Initiative is officially the largest STEM scholarship fund on the East Coast. Good, Page said. They moved through the room. Page shook hands with senators, tech moguls, and rivals who had tried to buy Blackwood Kincaid for scraps 6 months ago. She spoke their language now. She discussed market volatility, latency protocols, and geopolitical encryption standards. But her eyes kept drifting. She wasn't looking at the billionaires, she was looking at the staff. She watched a young server, a girl no older than 20, struggling to balance a heavy tray of crystal flutes. The girl's arms were shaking. A heavy-set man in a tuxedo bumped into her, spilling a drop of champagne on his sleeve. "Watch it," the man snapped. "Clumsy idiot." The girl froze, terrified. I'm so sorry, sir." "Do you know how much this jacket costs?" the man sneered. Page stopped mid-sentence with the governor of New York. "Excuse me, Governor," she said coldly. She walked over to the confrontation. The room seemed to warp around her. Harrison watched, a small smile playing on his lips. He knew exactly what was about to happen. Page stepped between the man and the girl. "Is there a problem here, Arthur?" Page asked. The man, a hedge fund manager named Arthur Sterling, turned around, ready to yell. When he saw Page, his face drained of color. "Ms. Sullivan, No problem. This staff is incompetent. She ruined my jacket." Page looked at the jacket. A microscopic spot of wetness. Then she looked at the girl. The girl was trembling, holding back tears, waiting to be fired. Page saw herself. "She didn't ruin your jacket, Arthur," Page said, her voice loud enough to carry. "You bumped into her because you were looking at your phone. I saw it from across the room." Arthur stammered. Page turned to the girl. She reached out and gently took the heavy tray from her hands. "What's your name?" Page asked softly. "Maya," the girl whispered. "Maya," Page said. "Go to the kitchen. Tell the manager, Henri, that you are reassigned to the VIP lounge for the rest of the night. It pays double tips, and you don't have to carry trays." "But," Henri said. "Tell Henri that Page Sullivan sent you," Page said, "and if he has a problem with it, he can come find me." Maya looked at her as if she were a god. Thank you so much." She scurried away. Page turned back to Arthur, who was sweating. She handed him a cocktail napkin. "Dry yourself off, Arthur, and if I ever see you speak to my staff like that again, I'll have your portfolio algorithmic trading privileges revoked before you can blink. Do we understand each other?" "Yes," Arthur squeaked. "Yes, absolutely." Page handed the tray to a passing busboy and turned back to the room. Harrison was waiting for her with 2 glasses of scotch. "Show off," he whispered as she approached. "He was a bully," Page said, taking the glass. "I hate bullies." "It's time for the speech," Harrison said. "Are you ready?" "No," Page admitted, "but let's do it anyway." Page stood at the podium. The microphone feedback whined for a split second, a sound that used to make her panic because it meant a system error. Now it just meant people were listening. "6 months ago," Page began, her voice steady, "I was standing right there." She pointed to a pillar near the back, near the kitchen doors. "I was holding a tray of shrimp puffs. I was wearing shoes that hurt. And I was listening to all of you talk about innovation and the future." The room was silent. "You spent $200 million on a security system that failed because the people who built it were too arrogant to look at the basics. You were looking at the clouds. I was looking at the clock." She paused. She looked at Harrison in the front row. "My father, Tobias Miller, built the foundation of this company. He was a genius. But he died in a prison cell because he believed that code belonged to the people, not the corporations. For a long time, I hated this building. I hated the name Blackwood. I wanted to burn it all down." A ripple of tension went through the crowd. This wasn't the standard PR speech. "But then I realized something," Page continued. "Code is just a tool. It doesn't have morality. People do. We fixed the Kestrel system not by adding more complexity, but by stripping it back to the truth. And the truth is this. The most valuable assets in your company aren't the ones in the corner offices. They are the ones you don't see. The ones checking the logs at 3 a.m. The ones cleaning the floors, the ones serving your drinks." She reached into her pocket and pulled out a small battered USB drive. My father left me this, she said. I finally decrypted it 3 days ago. I thought it was going to be a manifesto. Or a weapon. She held it up to the light. It's a patent, dated 1999. It's a design for a decentralized, self-healing server architecture. He called it Project Phoenix. He never released it because the technology didn't exist to run it yet. He knew it would take 20 years for hardware to catch up to his brain. Harrison sat up straighter. He had never heard of this. This drive, Page said, contains the blueprint for the next 50 years of cybersecurity. It makes the Kestrel look like a pocket calculator. And by all rights, it belongs to me. I could sell it to Google or Amazon tomorrow for $10 billion. The gasp in the room was audible. But I'm not going to sell it, Page said, and I'm not going to keep it. She looked directly into the camera lens that was live streaming to the world. As of this moment, I am uploading the source code of Project Phoenix to the public domain. Open source, free, for everyone. Harrison's jaw dropped. The board members looked like they were having collective heart attacks. No one will own the future, Page declared, because if my father taught me anything, it's that when you build walls, you just create a challenge for someone to break them down. We're done building walls. Tonight, we start building bridges. She stepped back from the podium. For 3 seconds, there was total silence. The wealthy elite didn't know how to react to someone giving away $10 billion. Then, Harrison Blackwood stood up. He started to clap, slowly, then louder. Natalie Reid stood up next. Then the governor. Soon the entire room was on its feet, a thunderous wave of applause that shook the chandeliers. An hour later, the ballroom was clearing out. Page sat on the edge of the stage, her high heels kicked off, dangling her bare feet. She was drinking a ginger ale. Harrison sat next to her, loosening his tie. "You realized you just bankrupted us, right?" He joked, though there was a hint of awe in his voice. "We can't compete with free." "We don't have to compete," Page said, looking at him. "We're the only ones who know how to implement it. I just created a service industry, Harrison. We'll be the mechanics for the engine everyone else is using. We'll make more money in maintenance contracts than we ever did in licensing." Harrison shook his head, laughing softly. "Tobias. He would have loved that. You didn't just give it away. You leveraged it." "I learned from the best," Page said. "My father taught me the code. You taught me the game." Harrison looked at her. The guilt that had haunted him for 5 years, the shadow of Tobias Miller, was finally lifting. He hadn't just saved Tobias's daughter, she had saved him. "So," Harrison asked, "what's next? You've conquered the market. You've revolutionized the industry. You're 25 years old. What do you do for an encore?" Page looked at the empty ballroom. She saw the busboys clearing the tables. She saw Maya, the young waitress, laughing with a co-worker in the corner, looking relieved and happy. Page reached into her purse and pulled out her phone. She opened a terminal app. The screen was black with green text, always the code. "I'm thinking about the leap second again," Page said thoughtfully. "The glitch is fixed," Harrison said. "Not that glitch," Page said, her eyes reflecting the scrolling data. "The concept, the idea that time can slip, that a second can be added or removed and change reality." She turned the phone to show him. "I found something else in the Phoenix code, Harrison. A pattern in the timestamps. It wasn't just a security protocol." "What is it?" "It's a prediction algorithm," Page whispered. "My father wasn't just trying to protect data. He was trying to map it. If you run this code on a quantum loop, it doesn't just secure the present." Harrison felt a chill run down his spine. "What does it do?" Page smiled. It was a dangerous, brilliant smile. The smile of a waitress who knew she was the smartest person in the room. "It debugs the future," she said. She stood up, grabbed her heels, and walked toward the exit. "Coming, Harrison? We have a lot of work to do." Harrison Blackwood sat there for a moment, staring at the empty stage. He looked at the woman walking away, the waitress, the genius, the partner. He realized then that the drama wasn't over. The story of Paige Sullivan was just beginning. He buttoned his jacket, smiled, and ran to catch up. And that is how Paige Sullivan went from serving appetizers to serving justice. She proved that talent can come from anywhere, and sometimes the person you overlook is the only one who can save you. It's an incredible story of redemption, coding, and high-stakes corporate warfare. But it makes you wonder, how many geniuses are stuck working jobs that don't use their talents just because they don't have the right degree? If you loved this story, please smash that like button. It tells the algorithm to share this with more people. And don't forget to subscribe and click the bell icon. We have a new story coming next week about a janitor who secretly solved a math problem that baffled professors for decades. You don't want to miss it. Thanks for watching.